Bort Bargith. Merchant. Leader. Victim. Etron's Folly has seen more than its share of death, yet murder remains a rarity here. When the pleasures of pudding become the tools of a killer, only the uniquely skilled can find the answers. 3 heroes answered the call. Questions were asked, staff interrogated. A clue found. Poison. The truth revealed itself with the coming of a goblin, an unwilling killer, and a victim in his own right. The heroes were given direction. A dead willow. A house in disrepair. A middleman slain. Evidence pointed to someone in the shadows, pulling unseen strings. The smell of burnt fur and acid-burned gums led the would-be heroes to the pens. Here the final piece of evidence lay trapped behind a wall of blood. But the truth will out. It was a murder of necessity, before the coming murder of spite.
Hello, welcome to the 8th and final campaign diary for Fall of Plaguestone. I can't tell you how nice it feels to have an adventure completed and all uploaded to the channel. My goal with all my campaign diaries is to both let people enjoy the story of these adventures, but also to show people how fun it can be to run them, and to help give proven advice on cool or helpful changes. I hope that this series has done something like that for you guys. While this is the final campaign diary for Fall of Plaguestone, it might not be the final video. I could see some value in making a final review or perhaps a player's guide in the future, but I'm sure you're eager to get on with this finale, so let's do it. Last session ended as our players broke free of their prison cell and re-geared themselves, ready to chase down Villery and put a stop to her schemes. Breaking out of the cell had been loud though, so in the southern room, creatures stirred and attacked. Our heroes clashed with a cinder rat and 2 alchemical drudges. They weren't particularly dangerous as their placement here was as workers, not as guards. I had the alchemical drudges run over to the alchemy table and I rolled a 1d4 to see which element they could infuse their alchemical strike ability with. I purposefully started this fight by having the drudges waste actions climbing out of the pit and manually activating their alchemical strikes because I wanted it to be on the easier side. Their last combat had ended with a total party defeat, so right now I cared more about rebuilding their confidence than giving them a hard fight. And as such, they killed these lab workers with minimal threat to themselves. With some peace returned, they began to look around the lab. This large chamber contains an alchemical laboratory. It is clear that this is a laboratory for only one alchemist. Everything is meticulously cleaned and well organized. 2 cauldrons bubble alongside a central table covered in alchemical equipment. The walls are lined with shelves that hold old books and orderly rows of glass bottles, each containing reagents and ingredients. 3 pits, their contents hidden from view, fill one side of the room. Nearby, a tall glass cylinder containing the blackened corpse of a dwarf, surrounded by a swirling green mist. This room had a lot of alchemical loot, so the party divided it all up, ready to use it against Villery. I did take the chance to add some additional healing potions to this loot, knowing how dangerous this next fight would be. The large glass tube interested them, so they went and took a closer look. They acknowledged the vapor, but they couldn't tell if the dwarf within was a victim or the source of it. However, they soon after found a book lying open on a nearby table. This was open on a page about the Viridian vapor and described a truly terrifying and deadly poison. What was worse, there were enough empty boxes of ingredients to cook up 500 batches of this poison, and since all the boxes were empty, they were likely too late. Lastly, they found a sheet of parchment that showed the Plaguestone from Etron's Folly and the note, "Mother's ring will be the key." This was to inform the party that the Plaguestone would be the site of the attack.
This seems to be the plan, or rather the key element of Villery's plan to take revenge on the villagers.
But Mother's ring is the key. I don't really understand. She has the disease and the Plaguestone. I don't understand how the key could be important.
Maybe it's the key to triggering all this?
I suppose.
I was thinking that I didn't see a ring on her, or rather can't remember seeing a ring on her. That maybe she's not wearing it, or maybe it's something entirely different, I don't know.
Can I think back and see if I remember a ring on her hands?
Villery didn't have the ring because at this point she'd already sent an alchemical drudge to make the long journey to Etrin's Folly. Our heroes didn't know that though.
I mean, this just shows how dire this situation is.
At least we know where she's going, right? She said she was going to release the disease now.
This is
So
the thing. Is she doing it herself? Because she said that one of her underlings is bringing in the last ingredient. And then the question is, does it automatically trigger once that is done, or does she have to actually trigger it with the key that is her mother's ring?
Perhaps the ring is made of something or has magical properties that is final in creating the compound, but so maybe it's harmless until she triggers it. But either way, we need to stop this happening.
This led to a discussion of whether they needed to run straight back to Etrin's Folly and warn the town now, or whether they find and stop Villery. For a while, they were leaning towards telling whoever they could before deciding that it's better to save everyone and going after Villery. Thankfully for me. They moved into the caves leading deeper into the ground. There are supposed to be some bat enemies here, a giant bat and a swarm of vampire bats. I removed these for two reasons. Firstly, after the capture and build-up of facing Villery, a random bat fight would have made for a weird pacing. Secondly, these were just normal bats. Villery's whole thing is elemental animals. Since these are just normal, unexperimented on animals, they felt more like wild bats that lived in the cave, not trained guards of Villery, and this, again, felt out of place for the final battle before the big bad end guy. So, my group moved unharassed through the cave until they emerged into the Emerald Depths. The winding passage ends in a large cavernous chamber. Running through the middle is an underground river gushing from east to west. A narrow bridge crosses the water. It looks slick with moisture and mold. On the far side of the chamber are immense formations of cloudy green rock, and in front of them a large black cauldron with a fire burning at its base. Light filters into this chamber from above through a twisting crevasse in the ceiling. The far side of the cavern is lit by glowing green orbs suspended by chains from stalactites. Villery was stood on the far side of the river, waiting for them by a large cauldron. Due to the psychic connection with the alchemical drudges, she knew that they had been killed and that the party were likely on their way. Stood between them was another terrible experiment, the behemoth. This poor guy doesn't get a whole lot of lore about him. He's basically just there to stop the party crossing the bridge while Villery fires off the alchemical crossbow for as long as possible. We couldn't begin a final boss fight without first exchanging some words though, could we? Well, getting impatient, are we? You couldn't just wait in your cell?
You told us what you were about to do. Of course we couldn't just stay there. I have to say, you need some better guards.
Well, they weren't exactly guards, they were cleaners. She glances at the large behemoth in front of her. He's my guard.
Well, this is the end of the road for you. We are going to take you in, and we will stop this madness.
Well, you're more than welcome to try. And thus, combat began. Our heroes rushed for the bridge, Namari raising her shield and blocking elementally charged bolts out of the sky. Wolfram and Misha began blasting at the behemoth with ranged spells as they approached. Soon after, our heroes clashed with the behemoth. It had reach, so as Namari closed the distance, it slammed into her with its fist. She pushed forward though and began cutting into the hulking monster. The behemoth was already below half hit points, so it tried to throw Namari from the bridge, but she stood firm, and it failed to remove the threatening champion. In a tantrum-like fit of anger, it smashed its body into the ground, shaking the earth and knocking Namari prone. Misha rushed towards Namari to help, but in her eagerness, she took a critical reactive strike from the behemoth. Luckily, Namari was able to provide champion's resistance and reduce the severity of the strike slightly. Misha pulled Namari to her feet and stabbed into the beast. Meanwhile, Wolfram caught up with his allies, slid his staff into two hands, and cracked the behemoth over the head. Seeing her guard was approaching death, Villery rushed down from the platform and launched an acid vial at Wolfram. This was a critical hit, and acid began rapidly melting away at his body for 2 times 2d6. Brutal. Finally, Namari managed to fell the behemoth, leaving its body slumped motionless across the bridge. Our heroes surged forwards, climbing over and past the dead mutant. Misha cast Bless and slowly pushed forward. Wolfram desperately tried to clean the acid from himself, but he was unsuccessful, literally melting to death as he stumbled along behind his allies. Having spent all her alchemically infused bolts and seeing our heroes rapidly approaching, Villery loaded a lightning flask into her alchemical crossbow, reloaded it, and prepared to face down these three very motivated heroes. Namari pumped a lay on hands into Wolfram, trying to keep him in the fight, and then ran for Villery. Misha forced an elixir of life into Wolfram, returning him to full health and giving him the time he needed to hopefully clear the acid. She sustained her bless, increasing its size, and followed towards Villery. Wolfram spent another full round desperately trying to clean off the devastating acid. He was unsuccessful, but it did finally clear up at the end of his turn. Villery didn't prefer melee engagements, but she was far from helpless. She sunk a bolt into Namari from point-blank range and threw bombs, all the while dodging attacks from Namari. Misha, however, took the chance to land a critical phase bolt on Villery that smashed through her body and drew her ire.
You know you're doing the wrong thing. You're such a clever girl, you this mess. Your mother would not be proud of you. And with these, I will make my bless even bigger.
Wolfram, now cleared of acid, rushed Villery and joined the battle again, launching spells as he closed the distance. Our party weren't the only people capable of healing though. Villery chugged a potion, returning herself to full health, and then she continued to fire elementally charged bolts at the party. Namari didn't give her much breathing room though, following her and slicing into her chest.
You know that destroying an entire town is just not worth it. I can't forgive you for what you've done.
She's breathing quite heavily at this point, and she has like a hint of fear in her eyes at how close you guys have gotten. I would expect people like you to understand.
People like us, you know nothing about us.
You say we don't understand, but literally it was you who got my father killed, and I wish she was a face bolt at her.
Nice. Oh
Yeah,
man.
that would have been so cool.
It would. I feel like that needs a hero point because that was a hero moment. Yes!
Oh shit! What the fuck? Yeah, she like staggers back and glares at you. I lose my mother, you lose your father. Seems about fair.
I'm not even from here, you bitch!
Awesome hero point moment. As Wolfram rushed up the crystals towards her, he missed his spell, and then Villery pulled out another acid flask, wiggled it in a remember this style motion, and then critically hit him again, causing a new dose of acid to begin melting his flesh. Namari took this moment to retributive strike, landing her own critical hit and badly hurting Villery. In an instance of shock and pain, Villery dropped the crossbow to the ground and thrust both hands into her pockets. In one hand she had a healing potion which she drank, and in the other she had bottled lightning which she smashed into Namari's face. Villery was now getting harried on all sides. Misha blasted her with another phase bolt. Wolfram used a scroll of enfeeblement to give her enfeebled too, and Namari swung at her relentlessly. She tried to make space, rushing across the cave while simultaneously launching Alchemist's fire at Namari that crit and set her ablaze. Our heroes chased Villery down, slashing and stabbing at her. Meanwhile, Wolfram recovered from the acid and drank a potion. Desperation had taken hold of Villery now, and she began stumbling back, throwing anything she had left at our heroes, some hitting and some not. Our heroes pushed through though, and as Namari dealt another nasty blow to her, Villery revealed the truth. For even with death on the horizon, spite controlled her actions. You swing a deep strike into her back as she's trying to desperately rush away from you. You feel your sword crack through a few of the ribs, and her breathing becomes heavy and raspy. She turns and almost like stumbles to the ground. It doesn't matter, you know. I've already won. I dispatched my minion to destroy the town before you even arrived here. Everyone in Plaguestone will be dead long before you get there.
Well, you can die knowing that your plan's going to fail. We're not going to let that happen. And time back to the others. Now. We need to kill her now.
Our heroes blasted her with spells and strikes, and all she could do was run further towards a dead end, throwing alchemical items at her attackers. But as she ducked and dodged past Namari's blade, Misha landed a phase bolt that critically hit, and she clattered to the ground. Another nat 20! Shit. Misha, how do you kill Villery?
I want to shoot straight through her heart, like cutting out a perfect-sized hole through her chest, just leaving a gap in there, and she will slowly notice that it's missing and that she's dying.
Okay.
All
You
that.
blast a hole through her chest, and she stumbles back and looks like she's about to say something, and then looks down and reaches up and feels the hole, looks up to you, opens her mouth to speak, but the strength leaves her and she stumbles, slamming back onto the dirt. Very dead. As Villery lay dead, all three of our heroes were still either burning or melting,
and as they removed these sources of persistent damage, they had no time to cherish the victory, having learned the Dominion of Villeries was already on its way to trigger the killing reaction. They began to rush from the underground space, only stopping to throw an alchemist's fire at the amalgamation in a half-hearted attempt to put it out of its misery. However, as they rushed up the spiral staircase, they realized that they'd been brought down here unconscious and didn't know what was ahead of them. By essentially skipping the entire first floor, they'd now have to fight their way out of the dungeon. This began with them needing to fight their way through 4 alchemical drudges in a lab. This was a quick, efficient battle that had them swiftly cut down the enemies. They rushed through the southern doors where there were supposed to be 2 brine sharks, however I removed these to improve the pacing a bit. Fighting your way into a secret base has a very different vibe than fighting your way out under time pressure, so I felt that some of these battles needed to be cut to prevent it becoming a drag. In the reception hall, they faced a single Zephyrhawk, rather than the usual 2. Rather than simply kill the bird and move on, Misha was very much against killing this creature, and as the battle began, she tried desperately to calm the creature. The experiments Villery had performed were wildly more successful than those of the sculptor. Her creations were not half-baked, tortured animals, but at this point, true, loyal elementals. So it was going to be difficult for them to convince the bird to stand down. However, they seemed very committed to this route, and when they rolled a natural 20, it felt appropriate to give them this win. So the Zephyrhawk acknowledged Misha and let the group pass with no further attacks. This just left the orcs that had already bested them once. Emerging back into the yard, the orcs immediately sounded the alarm and began to attack. Again, they approached this from a non-combat approach. Either they wanted to run, or, and this is the option they went with, they wanted to prove that Villery was dead. Most of the orcs do not speak common, however, Lord Nard does. Namari exited first and tried desperately to act out that Villery was dead. The action made them hesitate, but not entirely stand down. Misha jumped onto the railing and held out the alchemical crossbow that they had taken from Villery.
Villery has fallen. You can lay down your weapons. And hold it up really, really high.
Okay. I make a diplomacy of your own. Okay. Lord Nar will continue to hesitate and look around at the other orcs and look to the crossbow. She's really dead.
Oh, wait, what?
We killed her. I knew it. Yes, we killed her. It's over. She won't harass you anymore, or I don't even know what she had to do to get you to fight for her, but it's over. She's not there.
The orcs were untrusting but hopeful. They had our heroes lined up against the cliff while 2 of them went down to check if the story was true. After a tense couple of minutes, the orcs returned and confirmed with excitement that Villery was indeed dead. Seems you're telling the truth.
Yes. We have no reason to lie to you. Well, can we go? She seemed to have sent someone to the nearby village to poison everyone. And we don't want that to happen.
If you promise to never come here again, we'll let you go. We've beaten you before. Remember that.
Yeah, how could we forget, to be honest? But yeah, we will not come here anymore, and we will not tell anyone whatever was happening here. But also let out the bird. He's cute. He needs to fly. And I will when you want to go smoothly somewhere out, but at the end you just start running because you're scared.
Sure.
She just leaves.
Having bypassed the orcs, our heroes hurried away from Spite's cradle and then formed a plan. Misha would use repeated castings of Warp Step to sprint back to Etran's Folly as fast as she could by the shortest route. Meanwhile, Wolfram and Namari would follow the trail left by Villery's minion and hope to catch it on the way. This led to the final tense encounter of this adventure. This scene, as written, takes more of a cinematic style as they either wait for the drudge to arrive or catch up with it on the move. Since my group enjoy combat, I made it a final combat encounter with Misha stood at the Plaguestone protecting it and the other 2 arriving just in time to chase them down. Misha spent what time she had calling for people to flee, and while they seemed hesitant at first, after Delma got involved and given her encouragement, the people did begin to evacuate. So as the 2 drudges shambled into town, people were already fleeing. Yeah, I added a second drudge to give the encounter more drama as our heroes had to wonder which one had the ring. This combat began pretty simply, with both the drudges and Namari and Wolfram all rushing for the Plaguestone. The drudges are slow, meaning the party would be able to catch up. I actually placed them specifically so that they had enough rounds to catch up before they could reach the Plaguestone. To my surprise, Misha left the Plaguestone and approached the drudges and began attacking them. This allowed them to both rush past her. As they got close, the party did all they could to kill the drudges, using ranged spells and AoEs to bring them down. But they pushed on, at first ignoring our heroes, but then as they closed the distance on their target, one of them veered off and grappled Misha. To our heroes, this had exposed which one was carrying the ring, and that one managed to reach the Plaguestone. It wasn't over though. The Drudge needed 5 actions to finish the job. 1 to draw the ring, 3 to activate it, and 1 to place it in the Plaguestone. So they still had a chance. Misha tore free of the Drudge's arms and cast Warp Step to desperately chase down the Drudge. Next to her, the Drudge vomited up a beautiful ring and prepared to activate it. She attempted to disarm it so that it would drop the ring. A success made it loosen its grasp, but not entirely drop it. Namari finally reached the Drudge and tried to finish the disarm, but was unsuccessful. The Drudge used all 3 actions to activate the ring, causing it to violently vibrate and give off a high-pitched noise. The ring was now active, and all it needed to do was use 1 more action to place the ring in the Plaguestone. Wolfram blasted it with a ray of frost, and while it was still alive, it was much closer to death. Misha stabbed into it with her rapier, damaging it further, and then Namari finished it off, cutting the Drudge down. The ring clattered to the ground and she picked it up. The remaining Drudge tried desperately and hopelessly to disarm Namari, but it didn't take long for the group to kill this one too. And thus, Etran's folly was saved. After a few moments, the ring calmed once more. The fleeing villagers stopped and looked to their heroes. Gathering around, Delma spoke on behalf of the town, thanking our heroes for everything they'd done. The caravan members rejoiced to hear of Villery's defeat, and Misha joined them in a teary funeral for Bort, giving him the send-off that he deserved. In our epilogue, each hero described where they saw themselves moving forward. Misha continued on with the caravan, learning to fill the hole that Bort had left behind. After several years, she took up the position of head merchant, having learnt his roots and maintained his top clients. Wolfram stayed in Etran's Folly, helping to make it a town to be proud of. Eventually he was offered the role of sheriff and replaced the incompetent Rolf. And Namari continued her pilgrimage, spreading the protective light of Ragathiel. Eventually she found Finnick and, as promised, gave him a home with the Crimson Templars, where he has become a squire to great men and women. And that was it for our little adventure. Fall of Plaguestone had its ups and its downs as an adventure. Some aspects I really enjoyed, such as the initial murder mystery and Villery as a villain. Some parts felt like they needed more fleshing out, like the town as a whole. As the primary location of the adventure, it felt empty of personality at times. And some things just didn't work for our group, such as how scary a lot of the combats were, even after I had adjusted them. As a whole though, I'm going to think back pretty fondly on this adventure. It's my first completed Pathfinder adventure after all. It had its flaws, but I enjoyed creating the solutions to them. As for my players, feedback has varied. Villery received some good feedback. Clearly she left an impression on them as they spoke about how they liked her motivations and her boss fight. The inclusions of lots of animals, elemental or otherwise, was also very welcome by them. Namari has found herself being one of the players' favourite characters. The town itself, they didn't enjoy all that much. They felt Etran's Folly was empty and the NPCs were unhelpful. The difficulty also proved a bit much, even after I had downscaled things, leaving a bad taste in their mouths and making them wish they were a higher level for the majority of the adventure. A particular sore point for one of the players was how the adventure felt very geared towards the alchemist class. This is likely a side effect of the villain being an alchemist and leaving much of the story and loot in that area. It's worth noting though that the alchemist class did not exist at the time of this adventure's release, so I don't think it's intentional. Even if this adventure didn't captivate them all, I hope that they still take away the fun we had with our sessions and can think back fondly on the memories that we've made together. That's it. One adventure in the bag. Wrapped up. Finn. If you want more Pathfinder, then please go and check out our main series, The Abomination Vaults. For those of you that prefer shorter adventures, or those just curious about future projects, our next mini-series will have our heroes delve into the classic horror films of cinema as I lead my players into the Shiver system, and they begin a search and rescue mission for the lost ship. I hope to see you there. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.